Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meditation Coach Leo's channel. This is Coach Leo signing in. Today, I want to talk about how our own egos or ego can become an obstacle towards our goals, towards our objectives. I came across a very interesting book that's been written by R.Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And his book kind of reflected my book because I also talk in chapter 2 in my book. I also talk about how you have to get rid of your ego in order to function better as a consciousness. So I wanted to reflect or talk a little bit about Holiday's book, The Ego is the Enemy, and emphasize on how, once again, how ego is really counterproductive when it comes to reaching your financial or your personal financial, just any kind of goals that you might have set for yourself. So the way that the book of R.Holiday explains the definition of ego is that ego, he believes it's a hurdle, like an obstacle to your long-term growth or your long-term goal. So it becomes it serves as a threat rather than assisting you in a productive manner. So why is ego such a bad thing? I mean, we always, in our society, we always talk about ego as being a villain, but why is it really that bad? So it's kind of like this. The way that the book explains about ego is that it's an unhealthy belief towards your own ego or your own self. So ego turns importance into obsession, and ego turns self-confidence into arrogance, for example. So that's what the ego does. It kind of inflates what it has, and it wants to exaggerate. It wants to stand out. It wants to get approval. So it's very self-serving, self-centered. That's why when we say, you're egotistical, means that you're a selfish person, or that you would do anything to get what you want, because you have to serve your ego. So let's find out why the ego can be enemy. Holiday gives 3 examples. The first example he talks about is when an individual comes up with a personal goal, for example. At the same time, they want to get approval from other people. So they're constantly talking about their goals. They're talking about their progress, and they want to show off how much they have developed. And ego wants to receive an instant feedback from the outside world, so that it can grow its ego even more further. So it wants that constant attention. It wants to draw that attention, and wants to receive the spotlight. And it needs a positive feedback from the outside world in order to confirm that, oh, I'm doing the right thing, so I can now grow to become even bigger of an ego. So, when this continues on, the individual will start to talk more, and whether it's through social media or whether it's in a casual, like a meeting place, what have you. So it's going to start to talk more, talk bigger, rather than executing whatever that it needs to execute. The second example that he gives why the ego can become an enemy of yours is that once an individual is lucky enough to taste what success is, whatever the level of success that individual thinks is a success, they tend to think that they can challenge and be able to win all the time. So they're kind of they think that every other challenges that they want to attempt to challenge is all piece of cake. They think that once they accomplish something, they think they can accomplish everything in life. So they become overly confident, and this is where it gets very dangerous. So the the ego starts to take on more than it can chew, basically. The third reason why ego can become an obstacle or an enemy of yours is that when things don't go the way that you want, so when things go sour, and if you, let's say, you fail in a project or in a business deal or something like that, ego it's got very high self-esteem and pride. So it would hate to assume all the responsibilities. Rather, it wants to blame others for the failure because it wants to keep its pride. It wants to protect its pride. So this is basically one of the main three reasons why the ego can be counterproductive towards achieving your success or your goal in life. Now, the book also suggests a lot of solutions and teachings, but one thing in particular kind of caught my attention, and that was the book talks about the one of the early UFC mixed martial arts fighter, Frank Shamrock, and he used the plus minus equal principle. So what this represents is the plus signs represent him going in a cage with somebody who is actually stronger than he is. So plus symbolizes somebody who's better in terms of MMA skills. A reason for that is by challenging somebody who's superior than you are in terms of fighting skills, through the defeat, perhaps one can be able to realize that after all, that you're not the best. There's somebody who's better than you, somebody who has more experience than you, and that it kind of gives you a lesson of what the definition of being humble is. So it's a reality check, sort of. So the plus sign represents receiving a mentoring perhaps from somebody who is more experienced and more skillful than you are. The minus sign represents somebody who might be a little bit less of an expert than you are. So in this case, it's the other way around, where you would be mentoring the other fighter who is less experienced than you are, who's less skillful than you are. So you would actually share some of your experiences and some of the lessons that you have gained over the years, and kind of give a hand to those who need more experience and more skill sets. The equal sign represents a fighter who is equivalent in terms of your skill and experience to you, and so in this case, you're not really competing, but you're kind of sharing some of the know-hows, and you're not trying to prove anything, vice versa, and that way you can share some of the different techniques that one may use and stuff like that. So that way, it's a full package, plus minus equal. So by competing and exercising with these sort of individuals, the ego can be able to kind of get to see all corners of the life, and be able to kind of wake up from it, and that's where the individual can be able to have better control of your ego. The second solution that the book proposes is that once the ego gets bigger and bigger, it's very difficult for that particular individual to really objectively make an assessment of where they're standing, because they believe they're the best. They believe they're at the top of the food chain. So it's important to not exaggerate and be very, very objective about your skill sets, your experience, basically your ego. to further develop as a human being. And there's also another solution that the book talks about, and that is, if you really look at the modern society nowadays throughout the world, the competition level is so fierce. There's so many just people that wants a instant gratification. So, everybody is fighting to get onto that top. So, in while the setting is in that kind of condition, uh, being disrespected or being ignored, kind of gives a sense of death. That's how scary it is in this day of an age. And if somebody is silent or quiet, in a way that kind of represents the individual to be submissive. Maybe they're weak. They're accepting defeat. It kind of contains that kind of an image. But the truth of the matter is, what's really missing in our society nowadays is the silence, really. Everybody's trying to have the loudest voice in the room. Everybody's trying to, make their presence felt big. But what's really missing, and what we need more in our society is observation through being silent. I think, and that can, be through practice of meditation or introspection, things like that. So the book is really interesting in a way where, one can be able to learn more about what ego really is, and in the context of why the ego is the enemy. Once you read this book, you'll be able to reflect back upon your behavior, your past experiences, to see if you think that your own ego has served you, or it actually made things worse for you. So test that out. So that's all I have for today. And please hit that like button and subscribe. I would be very grateful for that. See you next time. Thank you.